Hey everybody, it's Mike from AMZ Advisors, and I have with me today the CEO of Kickfurther, Sean DeClerc, and we're going to be talking about inventory financing and crowdfunding for inventory financing in the e-commerce space. Sean, how are you doing today?
Great, Mike. Really excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
We're excited to have you here as well. From our previous conversations, I find your platform really interested in the way that you are helping people in the e-commerce space actually grow their businesses. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your company and what you guys do?
Great, yeah. So I'm the founder and CEO of Kickfurther. We are an online inventory crowdfunding platform. And what that means is we solve the problem that so many product entrepreneurs face, which is you have to pay somebody to make your inventory long before they're going to ship it to you and you can start selling it and earning revenue. So what we have is a community of buyers who are super interested in supporting entrepreneurs. They will pay your factory, they'll buy your inventory, and it gets placed on consignment with a business. And as you sell through that inventory, you pay our community of users back. So it's a way that you can get inventory without cash out of your pocket, and you can start earning revenue, and you pay through the inventory as you sell through it.
Awesome. I really like the idea, and that's part of the reason I was so interested in having you on the podcast. But how did you originally get into this? What was your background before you started Kick Further?
So I was running, my parents have been running a supply chain management company for more than 40 years. So I really came up and cut my teeth in the family business, working with a lot of businesses to try and optimize their supply chain, reduce costs by, oftentimes outsourcing manufacturing. And one of the things we realized was there was a lot of opportunity in this world. So I started my own merchandising business. It was like, okay, I know supply chain. I'll run my own supply chain, right? Start my own business. And that was going really well. We grew from 600,000 of sales in the first year to over 1 million of sales in the second year. I was super happy with that. Um, and and what happened was in the second year, we got these really big POs, $200,000 purchase orders from retailers, and it was great. But then we'd have to pay our factory, $70,000 deposit just to start production. And that started to have that cash flow had major impacts on my business. I just wasn't making enough revenue to pay the factory the amount they needed. And as the business was growing, it was just these ongoing increasing requirements, right, of what I would have to pay the factory. So at a certain point, I had a private finance group that was helping me along. And at a certain point, they said, look, this is scaling beyond what we can do. So you need to go out to market and find some scalable finance for the business. And when I went out to market back in the day, we went around. The best I could find was an AR factor that would buy my inventory at a 5% discount per month. And for a business like mine that was wholesale, operating on about a 30% margin with a 90-day turn, it was like seeing half my margin go out the door on day one just to fund the production of inventory. And I went from having a profitable, growing business to pretty much losing money on every deal I had to finance, right? And it was like, man, there has to be a better solution out there. And at the same time, concurrently, my sister ran a Kickstarter campaign, launched her company on Kickstarter. And in 3 weeks, she was able to raise almost $30,000. And it was just like, wow, there's obviously this community of people, right, that's willing to support entrepreneurs, even in the really early stages. Why don't we bring those people and connect them over to businesses like my own and the many other vendors that have the same problem that I have? And maybe there's a really big opportunity there, right? And so that was kind of the idea when we launched, August 2014, and 6 years later, here we are.
That's an awesome story. I really enjoy hearing that, and it's kind of great to see how your struggles actually got you to the point where you are of actually solving this problem for other sellers. I mean, there's a couple good things that I heard you talk about there. One of them is obviously cash flow, and that's a big issue in the retail space and e-commerce space as companies start growing. And if companies start growing quickly, they very often run out of cash. They need to actually purchase their inventory ahead of time. The second one there is obviously the crowdfunding aspect. I mean, there's crowdfunding efforts out there for people launching new products, but for crowdfunding for existing products and actually growing a company, there's a lot more value there. It seems kind of a non-traditional model. So my first question to you after that would be, what are the typical issues that you've seen yourself run into, you've seen other companies run into with cash flow issues, and why do these companies need to pay so much attention to what their cash flow is to keep growing over time?
Yeah, good question. The funny thing is that cash flow isn't an issue until it is. And then it's the biggest issue, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, how did I not know? Right. So I always encourage entrepreneurs that are like, oh, that's not a problem for me. It's like, if you're successful and your business grows, it will be, right? It kind of inevitably turns into this problem. So what we very, very typically see are businesses that have good, strong margins. They're selling direct to consumer through a website, or maybe they had a successful crowdfunding campaign or something, right? So they're getting some initial success and they're getting out there, and then Target comes along and they're like, awesome, we want to put 15,000 units on our shelves, right? Like we want to open up 5 doors and put in 15,000 units. And if it's successful, we're going to put you into 100 doors, right? And that's going to be a 100,000 unit order. And suddenly these entrepreneurs that have maybe been selling through 1,000 units, 1,500 units a month are faced with the idea of producing 10 times their monthly inventory in one order for delivery in 3 or 4 months in the future, right? And often that can be an opportunity that it's an opportunity to double or triple or 10 times the size of your business, right? So we see that there is a transition. These big retailers, they want companies that have brand equity, that have customers, and already have a product that, like the public kind of knows about, right? So they love companies like that. And if you're one of those companies and you end up getting these big wholesale orders, the immediate next problem you're thinking about is, how the heck can I come up with the cash to pay my factory for 10 times the production of what I'm doing on a monthly basis, right? And so that's a major point when we see a lot of businesses start to realize that cash flow is a big issue. And the other thing that we see is businesses that are getting to the point where they're approaching quantity discounts, right? So most manufacturers, they'll tell you, hey, if you buy this number of units from us, we'll pay X price, right? But we'll give you a 10% discount if you can buy double the volume, right? And so there's a certain point where you can improve your margins, improve your distribution opportunities, make your business more valuable if you have the ability to purchase more inventory on the front end, right? And so that's another great time, is as you're ramping up and you're approaching these quantity discount breaks with your manufacturer, that's a perfect time to be looking to solve that cash flow issue.
Okay. And I think, well, obviously, one way to solve that cash flow issue is using a platform like Kickfurther, crowdfunding the money from other investors. But what other options do companies have for getting that inventory financing that's maybe more traditional, or other inventory financing options that are out there for them?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I always say start building a relationship with your local bank. There's still community banks out there. They still want to support their community. So find them, get in those doors, start building a relationship, because they move slowly, and it takes time, but that will often be the best, lowest cost funding for your business, right? If you can get in with a bank. And then I would encourage anyone, if you're selling direct to consumers, right? Look for who is processing your current payments, right? So if you're using Stripe, if you're using Shopify, Amazon, many of those groups have their own capital arms, and my understanding is relatively selective. So they really try and get to like their top 1% of customers, is kind of the way it seems to me. But they have all your data and they're going to be right in there, and if you can get in with them, they'll often be pretty good partners. They can move quickly, right? Because they're already connected into your bank accounts and stuff like that. So that's definitely a good option. Most of those groups have some type of support in that way. Shopify, Stripe, PayPal, Amex, Amazon, right? A lot of those groups. Then the new up and comers, I would say for AR factoring, the number one would be, like the name I'm hearing often is Bluevine. If you've got big receivables you want to factor. And then there's Clearbank, which is a marketing they pull your marketing data in, and that's a bit of a data play as well. And then of course Kickfurther, which is inventory crowdfunding. We look at your inventory and your sales data. And we're specific, unlike some of those other groups, for physical products. So we kind of look at your supply chain is kind of our uniqueness.
Okay. So from the perspective of a seller, what do you think the advantage is to going the Kickfurther crowdfunding route versus using the traditional inventory financing sources?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've heard from our businesses is they really like that it's very transparent. They know what their costs are going to be from the very beginning. We operate as an increase on your cost of goods price. So, there's you don't have to worry about hidden fees or, all these other kinds of penalties that come in other situations. And we also have heard from the businesses that it's just like easy for them, right? So when they find Kickfurther, they know predictably how much inventory finance they'll qualify for. They can launch and get funded in very little time. And it scales. So that's the other thing, where if you're in a high growth business, if you have the idea that you might go from being in 5 doors to 50 doors, and you need that ability to scale with a solution, Kickfurther scales very quickly. So we've taken businesses from funding $20,000 of inventory to $300,000 of inventory, in like 12 months kind of thing. So we scale very quickly. And because it's crowdfunding and you're working with a community, as you continue to work with the community and build out your reputation, it gets better and better for the businesses we work with. So the cost to fund your inventory on Kickfurther comes down over time. It scales up with your business. And, fundamentally, this is something where you're funding with people, right? People that are interested in you as an entrepreneur. They could be potential customers, supporters, your fans, as opposed to just being a line item, for somebody else on their balance sheet.
Okay, I think that's very helpful to understand. Are there any collateral requirements or anything for using a crowdfunding system like Kickfurther versus using a traditional a bank loan, or any kind of AR factoring? Like, typically, I know my background is in real estate. I understand collateral for real estate loans. I don't know so much about on the inventory side, so maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So very often, if you work with merchant cash advance or other groups, what they'll do is they'll take a broad lien across all assets and all receivables, all sales, everything, right? So they take a very broad lien across the entire business, and that gives them superiority over anything in case things go sideways. Kickfurther, what we've done, and I think it's kind of clever, is we actually operate very well working with other other creditors, let's say. So what we can do is we can fund the inventory, we can have it produced and shipped to the business, but it's placed on consignment. And in reality, that's Kickfurther's inventory. Our security interest, we file a UCC1 lien across the specific inventory we're funding. So if we bring in a container load, that's Kickfurther's container load of inventory. And then if things go sideways, our UCC1 lien will give us superiority over our inventory. But we do not take a broad lien across everything, because that just, that's one of the ways that we can play nice with other, other groups, and we can also make it a much more scalable solution for the businesses that we work with.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big selling point right there, not having a lien across your entire business. I mean, it's scary getting to that point where you need to start considering financing for your business, looking at loans, and then thinking about the risk that puts on your business and the liabilities that you'll have to pay back. And it's one of the things that I find interesting about the Kickfurther platform. But one of the other things I've kind of been wondering is, you mentioned that we're crowdfunding. So, we have different individuals or businesses that are, purchasing the inventory on behalf of these companies. So who are these investors? What's the benefit that they get from the crowdfunding? How does that relationship kind of work?
Yeah, so our users are really anyone. It can be any person. We're limited to the US only right now, so I should note that. Above 18, so adults. And what we do is, it's literally like you can take a credit card, you could go to Alibaba.com, right? And you could buy some sunglasses. And if you knew your buddy has a sunglass hut, right? You could go to your buddy and say, hey, here are these sunglasses. Can you, I'll give you my sunglasses. If you sell them, will you pay me back $1.10 for each pair of sunglasses you sell, right? So you buy the sunglasses for $1 each from Alibaba.com. You give them to your buddy that knows how to sell them, right? Or can help you sell them. And he sells them, he pays you back $1.10 per pair of sunglasses that he sells, right? And that's almost exactly how it works on Kickfurther, except instead of having to find a buddy and instead of having to go to Alibaba and all these other things, we bring that whole process into one platform. So what you're looking at funding products, buying products from a manufacturer and placing them on consignment with a business. And it's a pre-agreed upon consignment rate, where if you buy it for $1, the business agrees that when they sell it, they'll pay you back, let's say $1.10, right? So you get 10 cents of consignment profit. I think one of the cool things about Kickfurther is that each of these consignment opportunities is very unique. So you're working with different types of businesses, different types of inventory, and different expected supply chains and sell-through times, right? And so I think that there's a major advantage for people that are interested in entrepreneurship to use it as an education opportunity. It costs as little as $20 to fund the inventory with one of these businesses, and getting those frequent updates and learning the process by dipping your toes in the water in that way, I think is a really great introduction to product entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think you actually just made another really good point there, and it just made me think of something else. If you're launching multiple products, let's say you have 3, 4 different SKUs, you could essentially crowdfund for each different SKU within your platform, correct? So a lot of times, if you're getting a loan, and again, it's for the general business, but on the crowdfunding side, you can get it for multiple products. So if you're trying to launch more products at once, you could essentially get multiple sources of funding to start growing your business faster. No?
Yeah, so we limit it for businesses. You're limited to one co-op consignment opportunity at a time on your first deal. And then the platform opens up and you can run consignments concurrently. So absolutely.
Awesome. That's actually very interesting from a growth standpoint, I think, and I think a lot of companies could take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Logistically, though, how is the coordination handled between everything? I mean, obviously, seller most of the time is dealing with the manufacturer, they're dealing with the purchasing, but now the inventory is being sent somewhere else. So logistically, how is that being handled?
Yeah, very interestingly, we kind of fold into their supply chain pretty seamlessly, right? So what happens is you've got a business, they already have a supplier, they have a quote, they have a relationship, they have an expected shipping address, right? And we don't even change almost any of those things. We don't change where the inventory is being shipped. It's still going to the business. They get it. They can sell through it on consignment, right? We're not changing the supplier. They're still working with the factory they want to work with, that they've been working with usually for years, right? And so what we do is we say, look, we're going to buy this inventory now, Mr. Factory, right? And it's going to be Kickfurther's inventory, and we're going to have it sent to this person, and we're going to pay you. And just like that, we can get in there. We get the information from the business, and that's kind of logistically how it works, right? We change who's buying the inventory. Kickfurther acts as agent on behalf of our group of users. And then we kind of act as the agent going around and tying up all the loose ends and making sure that the supply chain flows. And, again, that's my background, is in supply chain management. So this is kind of, I think, where the secret sauce of Kickfurther really is the fact that we're able to do this so seamlessly.
Interesting. Yeah, that does seem pretty seamlessly. I mean, obviously, the only change really there is the buyer, so that makes it a lot easier for a lot of companies to manage this, I think. You just brought up another point that made me think about something that I think is important for the listeners to understand is, what other ways do you support them? Obviously, you're supporting on the purchasing side, but if they run into issues with actually selling through the product, or in our world, on the Amazon side, maybe something happens and your listing gets shut down. So, I mean, that obviously leaves you with a big problem trying to move the inventory to get it back. So, are there other ways that you support your customers to help them succeed through selling online, or, in retail, wherever it may be?
Yeah. So I'll say we definitely believe strongly in customer success, right? Our customer success is Kickfurther success. If you sell through the inventory, you're very likely to come back and fund more inventory on Kickfurther. So it's one of these things that we love to work on and spend time on and try and build value there. It's not our expertise. And so what we've done, and I think what we've done pretty effectively, is to build out some great partners. So when the time comes when you're looking at updating your packaging or new distribution, or, with your Amazon listing, right? We have partners, and the businesses that we work with, what we like to communicate is, come to Kickfurther and tell us, what the issue is. And I guarantee you, we've seen it before, right? And we know if we can't help you, we probably know a person who can. And almost all things are best solved as soon as possible, right? So come to us. We have an active customer success team. And we will, if we can't do it, we'll find someone who can, or we'll provide at least the best advice we can. The other thing that I'm working on that I'm super excited about is we're developing our own app. So this is going to be live I'm hoping this will be live in Q1, and it is a product development, product management app, which essentially helps our entrepreneurs create product spec sheets and inspection spec sheets to solidify their supply chain, give them the ability to build redundancy in the supply chain, and to get competing quotes from different manufacturers and making sure that those quotes are quoting against the exact same product, right?
Yeah.
And also adding rigor to their quality control and quality assurance process, because you can just imagine if you haven't had this problem as a product entrepreneur, like, you're lucky, but everybody hits this at some point where they buy a thing and it ends up getting delivered to them in a condition that they weren't expecting, right? And if you rely on the factory's quality assurance processes to catch those issues for you, you're just kind of waiting for that to become a problem, right? So I encourage every single entrepreneur we work with to work with outside testing, quality control, quality assurance um, vendors, because that's just all it takes is one bad shipment. You get 2 container loads of inventory you can't sell, you can't send it back, the manufacturer is not going to take it, right? And I've seen businesses literally get killed because of a terrible shipment, right? It erodes your brand equity, it damages your relationships with customers. It's just so bad. And it's, again, one of those things, kind of like cash flow, where until it's a problem, it's not, right? And so we're trying to work very hard on this education of like, hey, it doesn't take much to make this a lot stronger and a lot safer for your business.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a very valuable way. And a lot of things that most e-commerce entrepreneurs that are getting into it for the first time, that maybe don't have experience on the retail side, that's a lot of areas, a lot of things that they probably don't focus on. I mean, I remember back when we were starting to sell, we were sourcing from multiple manufacturers. We didn't have product spec sheets that were exactly the same. We were just telling them the general concept, and exactly like you said, we ran into issues where the quality wasn't as good, or the product was slightly different, or even the packaging was slightly different, wasn't the same. It caused a lot of issues on that client experience side, and customer loyalty and people actually buying your product again. So
Yep.
that is definitely an issue that a lot of e-commerce sellers should be paying attention to. But going on to the next question here, if we are, from your experience, you've obviously been doing this a while, is there a type of product or a product category or vertical that seem to get more deals completed on the Kickfurther platform? Or is there, can any seller launch pretty much any product across any product category and be able to get a deal funded on Kickfurther?
So we kind of stay away from stuff that's regulated to sell, right? So we don't do any alcohol, tobacco, firearms. We kind of stay away from those product categories for now, because we're still building, and I think there will be a time, but not yet. And in terms of other product categories, I've always said we're pretty much product agnostic, right? So I don't judge what consumers are buying. Lots of people like to buy stuff that I wouldn't buy. And so, I'm not here to judge the products, right? So we want to fund inventory that's selling. We've done everything from cosmetics to home goods to electronics to apparel. Really, we've run the gamut. So we look for really, our sweet spot is in consumer product goods with, and that's like kind of it. Consumer product goods that aren't regulated, they do very well on the Kickfurther platform.
Okay.
And then if you're talking about recent trends in terms of like what you've been seeing selling recently, that's like all driven by coronavirus, right? Yeah. It's been this crazy year, and it's like, oh, what's not selling? Luggage. What is selling? Disinfectant wipes,
Yeah, exactly. I could picture that. That sounds about right. Cool. Awesome. And then understanding that a little bit more, how much sales history do you really need of a product before you can go get a deal with Kickfurther? I mean, you need to be selling for a year, you need to have a certain 3-4 months. What's kind of the process there for actually getting a deal?
Yeah, I think that's one of the places where we really shine. Is our minimum requirement is pretty much 150K of aggregate trailing 12 months revenue. If you're able to hit that in 1 month, theoretically, you could get funded in month 2 on Kickfurther, right? So we haven't seen that very often. It takes a little bit of ramp up time to get there. But that's the bar. And if you can get there in 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is, we're happy to support the growth at that point.
Yeah. And those aren't crazy numbers. I mean, we see a lot of people launch products that on Amazon, for example, that take off overnight, and 150,000 really isn't that much to actually get approved.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
And you know, Mike, that when you're at that stage and you've got something taking off, the most expensive thing for that business is being stocked out of inventory, right? Every day you're stocked out, you're losing your buy button to somebody else, or somebody else is like, oh, maybe this is an opportunity for me to take it over, you know? So it's like, it just represents this thing where it's like, man, if you see that happening, just make sure you don't stock out, right? That's the critical moment.
Yeah, exactly. Being fast and recognizing what the problem is and actually taking the steps to address it quickly is super important to make sure that you continue to get those sales. You don't give up, any ad space that you may have been stealing from competitors to be more relevant, to show up more on the platform, to have that visibility that you need. So managing your inventory is one of the most important things on the Amazon platform.
Right.
When we think about, obviously there's a cost to this, and I think you've talked about it a little bit. Maybe you could give us more of a detailed breakdown of what the fees are for a seller that is going to, fund a deal on Kickfurther.
Sure. So, we have market driven. So depending on the business, you can imagine that some businesses can command a lower, profit per month based on revenue and stuff like that. But what we typically see is that the profit offered to users, depending on the expected selling time, is anywhere between 1% to 2% profit per month. So you can kind of imagine if your cost of goods is like $1 and you're expecting to sell through the inventory in 6 months, kind of a typical, what you might expect to see is something like 1.5% for 6 months would be 9%. So your final cost of goods would be about $1.09 per piece, right? So that's kind of a little example. Kickfurther, we earn our revenue from a 5% success fee that has everything included in that, including the transaction fees, right? So it's not like Kickstarter where you've got like their platform fee and then you get hit with 5% processing fee. So our 5% includes everything. It's a flat fee, flat 5% for the deal flow. So that's kind of like the whole cost. And that's why I say we've got a pretty transparent structure for businesses. And I'll also point out, just to plug Kickfurther a little bit more, no cost to apply. And we don't earn any revenue unless the business is successfully funded. So we are 100% success-driven platform.
Awesome. That's always it. I mean, those fees are not much at all compared to a lot of the financing you're going to be paying on other platforms. And, AR factoring, the interest rates can really add up very quickly if you're not paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, if you compare it to AR factoring on that I was getting, we were paying 15% for 3 months, right? 90 days, 15% discount. With Kickfurther, you can get to 6 months at 14%, even including our success fee, So it's just pretty great.
Yeah. No,
at least I would be pretty happy as a product entrepreneur.
Yes, I agree. I think that's a great savings. It's definitely worthwhile. The one of the last questions I have for you is, we talked about the speed. So when you realize there's an issue, when you're selling, you need to make sure that you don't run out of inventory. You need to get that financing to purchase more. If you're going through a traditional lender, if you're going through AR factoring, whatever it may be, there's obviously going to be an underwriting process there before you can actually get approved. Well, maybe not an AR factoring, but for a traditional lender. How does that underwriting process compare to the Kickfurther platform? Is there an underwriting process?
Well, so we don't call it an underwriting process. We do have what we call a quality control checklist scorecard. So we run businesses through our scorecard, and we look for things like, is this business, for instance, running quality control with a third party, or are they trusting the factory to deliver the inventory, according to spec, right? So we look for stuff. A lot of our stuff is focused on the supply chain. I think that's where we, make a lot of hay, so to speak. And in comparison to other groups, I mean, there's some people that move faster, right? So if you're working with a group like that's looking at your data, your payment data, oftentimes they can make a decision practically instantly and deposit funds into your account, let's say 24, 48 hours later. With Kickfurther, because we like to get to know your supply chain a little bit, right? Our qualification process is typically on a business that moves very fast. It can be as little as about 48 hours. More typically, it's about a week or 10 days, right, to get through, because we're talking to the factories, we're verifying quotes and stuff like that. And then once you're funded on Kickfurther, once your deal launches, almost every deal on our platform is getting funded within the first day, within the first 24 hours of launch. So typically once you get through the qualification process, which is largely on the business, how quickly they connect us to people, and how motivated they are, it takes about 24 to 48 hours to get funded on the platform once you get through our process.
Awesome. I mean, that's still a pretty quick turnaround. There probably are people that are quicker, but
Yeah.
even still, that's not that bad.
I mean, it's designed so that if somebody has a PO and they've got an opportunity, that they can get through the process and they can get their funding, right? So we made it so we really meet the speed of the entrepreneur, because some people are like, hey, I want to know what's going to be available and then I'll do the work when I need it, right? Some people need it, like I need it Friday. I need to know Friday, right? And we want to be able to meet those people too.
Yeah, that's a good point. The urgency of everything definitely depends on what you have going on in your business. So
Right.
it's a very good point as well. All right. Well, it's very interesting hearing about the platform. What do you see for the future of Kickfurther over this year, the next 5 years? Where do you see the company going?
I'm really excited about this app that I was just talking about, this Snowmelt app. I mean, increasingly, as I look at what Kickfurther is and how we can really differentiate ourselves in the market, I think it's about investing in product entrepreneurship as a whole, right? And really looking at saying, hey, there's a lot of people that are interested in just solving this one piece, which is, getting money to people that are going to pay them back, right? But Kickfurther can really invest in that, in what you brought up earlier, Mike, which is what about all the other stuff, right? That's so specific to product entrepreneurship that there isn't a lot of great support out there, right? Like even this little product spec sheet app that we're creating, like it's not super complicated, and it's not like this is arcane knowledge that people don't know, right? It's just like this thing that hasn't been very easy to make money off of, so nobody's worked on it, right? But I believe that this is going to create a lot of value for entrepreneurs, and the more that we can support entrepreneurs, the more that they come to Kickfurther to help them solve the problems. I think the more that cements us as the solution going forward for this ecosystem and this market that I really strongly believe in, which is product entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the support for entrepreneurs, building a base, being able to help somebody is a great way to bring more business into yourself. But I mean, just in general, giving this opportunity to a lot of other e-commerce sellers, whether they use your platform or not, is just going to provide more value, help more people be successful, and just in general be a better result for everybody.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly. I really want to position ourselves as supply chain experts that you can trust, who can also help you fund inventory if you need it. Like
Yeah.
that's a good spot for us to be in.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a great place to be. So, we've had a chance to talk about the platform, how the inventory financing works a lot. Is there anything that you think we haven't covered that our listeners or e-commerce sellers should know about Kickfurther or how your company works?
I'm kind of curious what your take on, since you work with so many of these Amazon sellers, if I'm allowed to ask a question. I've heard all this stuff going on about Amazon, like not letting you hold as much inventory, and they've made some changes with this holiday season, right? Probably maybe to do with the pandemic. So, you're close to it. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts or comments about how an entrepreneur can deal with something like that, right? We're starting to get those questions ourselves.
Yeah, well, this is a very common thing, and a lot of people are running into it this year. Originally, this started happening back in April, May, where we had such a high demand for the products you talked about, like disinfectants, PPE products, whatever it may be. Amazon's warehouses physically could not handle all the inventory processing, so they started restricting people. And that's pretty much carried on through the rest of the year. One of the things we've started to see change is that more of the fulfillment by merchant offers versus fulfillment by Amazon using Amazon's fulfillment network have started to win the buy box more often. So that allows the opportunity for sellers to not necessarily use Amazon's fulfillment network, which can give them a higher margin. It obviously reduces their fees a little bit. So that's a big win for a lot of entrepreneurs and merchants that have their own fulfillment capabilities. And even if they don't have their own fulfillment capabilities, they don't have their warehouse, maybe they're a 1 or 2 person operation, there are other options out there. There's a lot of 3PL networks, so third-party logistic companies that are doing the warehousing. Some of the bigger names out there are probably, Deliver, Red Stack Fulfillment. A lot of other companies in that space can do a lot of the warehousing and will actually send out the inventory for you. So that is another way you can possibly save on fees from the Amazon platform. And it's one way that you can guarantee that you can still deliver fast shipping to your customers. We've helped a lot of our clients, depending on what type of products they have, for example, food products, set up delivery networks where if it's a frozen good, they can reach the entire US within 24 hours. So by offering that faster shipping, by distributing your inventory strategically across the US, you're able to meet a lot of this demand and avoid a lot of the issues with Amazon not able to handle your inventory, or the processing times to actually get your inventory in there. So that's one way we've really focused on dealing with a lot of these restrictions. And I think it's just going to become more and more important. Amazon physically cannot open enough warehouses fast enough to deal with how quickly Amazon e-commerce is growing overall. So that's kind of the way that we've dealt with that. But yeah, I
love how you position this problem as an opportunity. Like, oh, it's a good way you can increase margins if you don't have to go through their warehouse, right? So
exactly. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. There's always opportunity in e-commerce. I mean, you're a prime example of it. Crowdfunding for inventory financing. That's an incredible opportunity. Provides a lot of benefits to the e-commerce seller. And there's even within a retail physical product business, there's so many different opportunities because you can drive traffic from almost an unlimited amount of sources, whether it be SEO, paid ads, social media, whatever it may be. There's so many different opportunities to grow an e-commerce brand. So becoming too reliant on one platform or one fulfillment solution like the Amazon Fulfillment Network or the Amazon platform in general is a big issue for in e-commerce. From my perspective, you really need to diversify and have a lot more opportunities and a lot of different sales channels. So I think this was a very long-winded answer to your question, but that's kind of my perspective on everything when I think of how to deal with that on the Amazon side.
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, it's just been such a big issue this year. So to hear from you is how you're handling it is super cool.
Well, I'm glad I was able to help there. If any of the listeners want to get in touch with you, Sean, or want to learn more about the Kickfurther platform, where's the best place they should go?
www.kickfurther.com will take you to, get you all the information you need. And if you want to reach out to interact with me directly, you can get me at Sean@kickfurther.com. Email is the best way to reach out to me.
Awesome. That's very helpful. I appreciate your time today, Sean. It's been great interviewing you. I'm really excited about your platform, really excited to see what you do with it. And I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of our listeners and a lot of e-commerce sellers in general, looking for new ways to creatively fund their growth. So thank you again for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here.
All right. Hopefully we'll talk again soon.
All right. Talk soon. Bye.